My name is Ekwa Msangi. I am the writer, director, and producer of the film Farewell AMOR, which premiered in U.S. competition at Sundance Film Festival 2020. I grew up in Nairobi in East Africa, and at that time, we didn't have any local content. We had one or two slapstick comedy type shows that reflected our lives, but it was a very inaccurate reflection. I complained about it all the time, and finally my dad was just really irritated with me complaining about it so much, and he sort of fine, just make your own films then. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my own films. Spike Lee was the only Black filmmaker I'd ever heard of. And I did research and I found out he went to NYU. So I decided I was going to go to NYU. And I got into NYU. But unlike my peers, they had all these films that they loved and they adored, and they were inspired by these films to make, pictures of that nature. And I came with the absolute opposite inspiration. I came to film school because of all the films that I hated and that I wanted to see something different. I mean, the first artist I was introduced to, thankfully, is Ousmane Sembène, who is a wonderful Senegalese filmmaker. And what I loved about his films is they were just really funny. Like, people definitely had challenges, but he was able to treat them and talk about really serious things, governments and colonialism and neo-colonialism with just a very tongue-in-cheek kind of humor. Farewell AMOR is a story about a family that's been separated for 17 years due to visa immigration issues. And at the top of the film, they're finally reuniting for the first time. And we get to follow along as they go on this journey of rediscovering themselves and each other while using the tool of dance as a way to find their way back to each other and bridge the gaps that have formed over the long period of time that they've had apart. You often take for granted what it takes for people to be able to travel. And it's not just about the money to buy a ticket, but really it's about visas and the ability, the permission. And if you've ever been at an airport, I lived in Cuba for a little bit, and I mean, that airport, being able to see people reuniting with their families after so long and after so much has happened and so much water under the bridge, and, the kids that you never met and the phone calls that got cut off early and, all of those kinds of things. That image always stayed in my mind. So that's where I started from when I started writing the film, was this man who's waiting to see his family for the first time in a really long time, and then what's going to happen. A lot of big Hollywood films have shot in East Africa and in Kenya in particular, but you rarely, if ever, get to see any people in those films. They tend to be films with a lot of animals, with a lot of savanna, grasslands, a lot of white people finding themselves and finding their stories amidst the animals and the savannas, but you never get to see actual people there. And that really bothers me. And so my personal mission in many ways as a filmmaker has been to share those stories, share the stories of people, and then just the fabulous people that I know, because there's so many interesting people that I've met in my life that we never get to hear about.